Welcome to Daf Mem Hey of Likkutei Torah, Sefer Vayikra, Parshas Bechukosai, and the Maimah we'll learn will be quite Kabbalistical deep, and then a biurah, an explanation, which will help explain the some of the ideas in a more sort of easily receivable style. We'll continue for the following two daf after today. Okay, so it's Parshas Bechukosai. The pasuk says at the beginning of the parasha, "Im Bechukosai Tolkho," that if you follow the Chukim, the laws of the Torah, then you'll have all blessings, and if not, then things won't go well. Now, the Gemara says that Ein im ela lashon tachanonim, that whenever the Torah says im, it is Hashem is asking us, is begging us, please. So im bechukosai tolkho should be understood as, please follow my laws. And the Gemara proves this from a pasuk. So what is this idea that Hashem is begging us to follow his laws? Another question. There are different ways that we could talk about the laws of Hashem, but the word chosen is Chukim, Bechukosai, and Chukim relates to laws that Hashem, laws which I have already instituted for you. Shechakakti lachem. The Gemara says, and this word chakakti implies it comes from the word engraving. So we need to understand why we use the word for mitzvahs, which relates to in being engraved. Thirdly, it says, if or please follow my chukim, my engraved laws, but it uses the word tolkho, if you go in the ways of my laws. It doesn't say if you observe my laws. So we need to understand that as well. Now, Torah is, within Torah, there's the oral Torah and the written Torah. Now, within the written Torah, there's different types of writing. You can either write like with ink and a pen, or you can write by engraving, and that's how the luchos were. The two luchos that Moshe brought down were engraved, of course. The difference is that with engraving, the letters are part of the stone itself, whereas with writing, the ink is something separate, which is on top of the paper or on top of the parchment. And so Torah in general is Torah shebechsav, the written Torah, but then there's this high level where it's actually engraved Torah. Now, the Zohar says that there are three things that are all bonded together. There's Hashem, the Jewish people, and Torah, and every Jew has these two levels, the same two levels as Torah, the written Torah and the engraved Torah. So every Jew has that inside himself as well. Now, the core difference between a yid versus a malach versus an angel is that the angel, whatever level he was created in, that's the level he stays at, whereas our neshamas, our souls, are always moving, and that's the meaning of the pasuk. I'll put movers, meaning the neshamas, between these people who just stand like a statue. So the angels, they just stand still, whereas we, in the neshamas, the souls, are always moving and elevating. So the angels, they were created in a certain way from Hashem's speech. And when we say Hashem's speech, Hashem doesn't have any attributes of a physical body or so how do we describe it as speech? So what we mean is that speech is something separate and outside of the person. And a word will never change to a different word. Speech is stuck in the way it is, and that's how the angels are, where some angels are predisposed towards serving Hashem out of love and others out of reverence. But whatever they are, they will stay that way forever. Whereas the neshamas, the souls of Yisrael, come from Hashem's thought, and thought easily moves from one thought to another thought. It's like a fountain that's constantly flowing and developing from one thing to another. And this is like the river that comes out of Eden, of the Garden of Eden. So that the Torah describes it as there's a river that comes out of Eden to give water for the garden, meaning that Eden is the highest level, and then a river comes out of it, and that waters the garden. So this river is constantly flowing, and that represents the Eden is the source of the source of Chachma. And then it develops through to give sustenance to the garden. The garden is the Gimel Nun, the Gan 53 parashiyos of the Torah, and it's sustained through the river. Now, it says that about the pasuk says that that our forefathers came from the other side of the river. So meaning that they're beyond the Nar, beyond the river, which we compare the river to machshava, to thought, which is constantly flowing. Within thought, there's actually two levels. Like we see that when the Torah talks about our thought and Hashem's thought, it says our thought is not like Hashem's thought. It uses the plural. Our thoughts are not like Hashem's thoughts, because there's two types of thought. There's the lower thought, which is thinking in words, like thinking as we would speak, just that it's in your mind. And then there's thinking, which is ideas, where there's no visible words. There's no noticeable words. Now, when the Pirkei Avos says that the word was created with asar mamaros, with 10 utterances, and it could have been created with one utterance. So then that one utterance is thought, the way it's involved in that it parallels speech, just that it's in thought, but it still has words. And that's where everything, it says Hashem scans every all creation with one scanning. But then there's the higher machshava, the higher thought, which is just the concepts beyond words, and that is like the level of engraving. Where it's, you don't have separate ideas, when an idea comes into words, then it becomes separate from the person himself. Whereas when it's just the idea, so then it's one with the person. And therefore, because it's one with the person, it's less limited, and it's able to develop and move to expand his ava yira, his love or reverence to Hashem, unlike angels who can't do that, and until he reaches the highest level of thought, which is compared to Eve Hanor, the other side of the river, which is the ultimate flowing and movement without any limits. Okay, that ends Aleph. Now base. So when do we have this flowing of our love to Hashem? So that's at the time, that's when we daven, and before we say Shemona Esrei, it was instituted that we should say Psukei de Zimra, and the brachas before and after, and then eventually we get to Shemona Esrei. Now, we daven 3 times a day, which was established by the Avos, our forefathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov correspond to Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferes, which are otherwise known as Gedula, Gvura, and Rachamim, the greatness, severity, and mercy. And Now, there are many psukim that explain and give us meditations into Hashem's greatness that will bring us to a love of Hashem, and other psukim that will bring us to a reverence of Hashem, and then others that will bring us to feeling to recognizing Hashem's great mercy upon us, and when the idea of mercy is that it can connect the highest to the lowest, that someone very high can have rahmanas, can have mercy on someone who's far removed from him, and the only connection is that he has mercy on him. So that all creation is only a ha'ara from Hashem. It's only a ray from Hashem. It's not Hashem himself. Like the pasuk says, that his glory is on earth and heavens. In other words, it's not Hashem himself. It's only his glory. And Eretz is earth represents mamale, Hashem's light, as it fills the world, and it nurtures the world each level according to how much of Hashem's energy it can take in. And then heavens represents Sovev, Hashem as he is surrounding worlds and beyond the worlds. But even Sovev is only a ray from Hashem, and therefore we can there can be rahmanos, there can be mercy on all on both what is the light of Hashem, which is mamali, that is limited in order to fill worlds, to be within worlds, and even on Sovev, because both of them are not Hashem's essence. So when a person thinks about this, so then he'll want to lift himself and with his whole being and his character to Hashem. And like the pasuk says, Elech Hashem nafshi esa, that to you, Hashem, I lift my soul. Now, Ava, Yira, and Rahmanos, love, reverence, and mercy are the qualities of the three of us, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And the three of us are three of the seven shepherds that allow the Jewish people who are their flock to elevate to closer to Hashem day by day. Now, of the three Avos, the one who had the most difficult time raising his children, in a way, the most hard incidents with the children, was Yaakov. This is now over the page, third column of Memhei. Yaakov represents Rahmanos, mercy, and it says that Karoya Edroi, like a shepherd who, one who shepherds his flock, Yira Bizroya, Yira, he will shepherd Bizroya Kabitz Taloim in his arm. He will collect lambs over Cheka Yisa, and in his bosom he'll lift and lead the young sheep. So now, this lifting up of the flock to Hashem is like in davening, where we lift ourselves up to Hashem. Now, going back to the pasuk, in Bechukosai telecho, so we said that im means please, that Hashem is beseeching, Hashem is begging, please may it be that just Chukosai should be enough, that through, and we shouldn't need anything besides davening, where we connect Hashem in this deep way, like engraving. And engraving is like where the writing is from the essence of the stone itself. So it's like the avos who come from from beyond the river, past the river, which is represents the high level of machshava, which is beyond which is thought, but not thought as it is in letters, but thought as it is in ideas, where the letters are not noticeable. And what Hashem is saying, may it be that we should go in Telecho, that we should go in the ways of Chukim, meaning of this deeper connection where we're one with Hashem. But that's not where our body is at. Our body is a physical body, and it doesn't relate to this level of engraving where we're one with Hashem. And in order to be at that state, so we have to protect our keli, our vessel, that we're able to take we're able to take in this godly connection. And that is the meaning of the second half of the pasuk. It starts off in Bechukosai, then goes on, and you'll protect my mitzvahs. So the mitzvahs are divided into the positive mitzvahs and the negative mitzvahs. Now, the negative mitzvahs are about separating us from the bad, and then the positive mitzvahs, they're like the limbs of Hashem, which are like vessels. Every limb is a vessel for a certain power, a certain ability. So the eye is a vessel for the power of vision, and the ear for the power of hearing, etc. And then also all of them are vessels for the general life force of the body. So in a similar way, the mitzvahs are vessels for godly life force. And the mitzvah, for example, which relates to the mind, is a vessel for it's a vessel for the energy, for the content that comes from the mind. And similarly with Hashem, so our mitzvahs are a vessel for that light which comes from the Chachma. And this is similar to what it says in the Megillah, that Yein Malchus Rav Kiyad HaMelech, that there's a lot of wine, like with the generosity of royal generosity, there's a lot available, and there's a lot of light of Hashem, and that's all the content behind the mitzvah, but it needs a vessel to hold it. Now, the Torah mitzvahs could be divided into categories and into details. For example, within Torah, you have Mikra, which is Tanakh, then you have Mishnah, then Gemara, and other parts of Torah. Similarly, mitzvahs can be divided into different groups, and that's the meaning of what it says in the Megillah, together with Yein Malchus, the royal wine. It goes on Kalim Shainim, that on offer at this royal feast was vessels of different types. And this is to hold Hashem's light. That's the spiritual meaning of these kalim, these vessels. And the spiritual meaning of wine is about revelation, that when you drink wine, the secrets come out. So that represents revelation of secrets. And wine also creates passion, which normally that passion stays within the heart of the person. The person's reserved. He doesn't show his full passion and what he's really feeling. But then it comes out through wine, which is the mitzvahs, and that Ava Masateres, that hidden love of Hashem, comes out. And that the neshama wants to go back to its source, which is beyond mamale and beyond even sovev. And when we do a mitzvah, so that mitzvah is it's a keli for Hashem's light, which it then can bring the person back to go beyond the regular light of Hashem shining in the world, in a way of rotzi and shuv. That rotzi is that he's trying to jump beyond the world, and then shuv to bring Hashem's light back into the world. And this is the meaning of the pasuk in our parasha in Bechukosai. It says, "V'hisalachti b'seichem." Hashem says, "I will walk among you." That Hashem will come down to us, and vayisi lachem lelikim, and be for us as a God. And this is through mitzvahs, which are a keli, a vessel for Hashem's light. So when we do the mitzvahs, so then the mitzvahs bring they preserve the wine, like it says that es mitzvah tishmar, that you guard the mitzvahs. It preserves this wine, which represents the passion that we have within us for Hashem, and then that comes out like when we, just like physically when a person drinks wine, so then they're less reserved. So to this ahava, this inner love that we have to Hashem, comes out. And then we're no longer stationary like an angel that is at a high level but never advances, but instead we're able to advance. And therefore, because we're advancing, therefore we can be touched by it can hit us. This spiritual realization can hit us and cause us to cry, like it says in Sheramalis, it says bax'y, that he will go along weeping. So when we're moving, we're going, then we could be weeping out of this mercy and Rahmanas, feeling this pity on the neshama that it's been thrown down into this mark, and how we have been, and our neshama has been distanced from Hashem. But then the crying is temporary, and then, like the pasuk continues, by Yahweh, that he will come back with song, because serving Hashem is ultimately with simcha, with joy. Maybe temporarily with feeling crying or feeling bitter, but ultimately it's with joy. And the same pasuk says noise meshach hazara, talks about carrying the valuable seeds, and this is reminiscent of the other psukim of bechay yisa, or the psukim where we that we say that davening is elech Hashem nafshi, so that I'm lifting my soul to Hashem when I daven. So again, talking about carrying to lift us to beyond the river, like we said it at the oves, come from beyond the river, which represents the high level of machshava, with thought, where you don't notice the letters, just the contents. And so we've got to always strive for this to rise beyond, and not to be satisfied even if we're at a very high level. But if we're at a stationary level, that's not enough. And we should follow the injunction of the Torah, the command of the Torah, Kadoshim tiyu, be holy, ki kodesh ani, because Hashem says, you be holy because I am holy. That we can all strive to rise in holiness and closeness to Hashem. And this is all through mitzvahs, that like we said, it preserves the wine, which is the idea of bringing out our inner soul. And then the brachas continue in Bechukosai that the earth will give forth its produce. So that represents it's going from the earth up. The earth bring forth its produce, and then the trees will give forth its fruit. That represents from above down, and the pasuk says in Bechukosai, I'll command my blessing that when you keep Shemitah, then you'll have a blessing and you'll have enough produce, and this relates to the meaning of brachas in general. Whenever we say Baruch Atah Hashem, bless you Hashem, as we'll explain in the biur of the Maimers. This ends the Maimer itself. Now we go on to the beginning of the biur. So, first of all, what is this idea of Bechukosai that the pasuk links going with Chukim, which Chukim are related to letters that are engraved. So what's the connection between this? When we talk about Chukim, mitzvahs, as they relate to engraved letters, we use specifically the word Telecho, you shall go. So he explains there's a difference between written word and engraved word. That just as physically with the written word, there's the ink and the paper or parchment, and they're two separate things. Even though they stick together and they become like one, and you can't have the letter with just ink. The letter is only ink and the paper together, but still they are two separate things. So, and only that they have to come together in order to create words. And that's like a garment, which is separate from the person, although the garment may fit like a glove on the person. And even if he's wearing this garment the whole time, but still it's a separate thing from the person. On the other hand, an engraved letter, the engraved letter is part of the stone itself. So it's not only a garment, but it's part of the essence of the stone, even though it's not the same as before the engraving, that it loses some of its luster. Now it's in the shape of a specific letter, so it's not just simple like it was before. But still, although something new has been created, but it is still part of the stone itself, because there's nothing you added. You've only cut into the stone, shaped the stone. And yes, you've given the stone a specific form, but still it is one thing with the stone beyond the garment. Final paragraph, Hine. Now, this is a metaphor to help us understand physically, but the point is for us to develop this idea spiritually as well. And relate it to the luchos, which were engraved in the words of the luchos were engraved in the luchos. So we need to understand the spiritual meaning there, and we'll explain that later. But first, we'll explain what does written word and engraved word mean spiritually. Now, the person, humans are called medaber. They're called beings who speak. And right at the beginning of creation, where it says that Hashem created nefesh chaya, a live soul, Onkelos translates it as ruach mamala, a speaking spirit. So, yes, speech comes from the soul, and thought is even more close to the soul, but still, speech is more physical, and there's a air which has to come out in order to produce sounds, and that's like something outside of the person himself. Even thought, which is more refined, but still, when you think about specific words, that's also something foreign to the soul itself. Yes, it's more spiritual than speech, but still it's still lower than the soul, and therefore it's only a garment of the soul. And even when we think about words, think in words, that's only a garment of the soul, and that's still considered a written word. On the other hand, when we so now over to the memvav, when we so yes, the words of thought are higher than the words of speech, but they're still not the soul itself, and they're only like a garment. The only difference is that the machshava is like a garment that he always keeps on, where like a singlet or something, undershirt, whereas speech is like a garment that you can take off and change it for something else. Despite that, when the person speaks, it is his very soul, his very being that is speaking. But still, the speech is something added on, something separate from the person himself. But that's just like the parchment. Without the parchment, the ink itself would not produce any letters. But still, the parchment and the ink are still two separate things. And so when the person speaks, so without the soul, then there would be no speech. Just like without the parchment, there'd be no letters. But still, they're two separate things, like we explained. Okay, and we'll conclude there, and then tomorrow we'll go on to the high level of engraved words.